They put me at this check-in and there's no system whatsoever. I know, because I've been here all day, I know they're spending $1 million on Calvin Harris to DJ. I know that they're spending tons on production and talent and floral and everything, and they have tons of talent coming tonight. And I'm like, so there's no plan for the 1,000 guests that you have that are gonna come in? And the answer was no. The first thing I did was brought it to my boss, who owned the company that I was interning for. She was like, yeah, I think this is a terrible idea. I don't think it will work.
What's up, everyone? Today we have another awesome guest, Celeste Durve. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You've been a longtime friend, an incredible entrepreneur. Tell us about yourself. You have a really unique story. You grew up in LA, and you have an amazing, fast-growing company called Viper, and you're just one of the more interesting people that I consider a really good friend. And
Thank you.
Starting off, just tell like, for those listening, you inspire so many incredible both male and women entrepreneurs. Tell us your story, like from start to finish.
Oh man. Okay, yeah, so I am born and raised in LA. My mom is an immigrant. She was born and raised in India. And so yeah, she came here and she met my dad and had me, and from there, my dad's kind of like on and off in the picture, so I was mostly raised by a single mom. No, it's all good.
No, I'm in the single mom club too. So
yeah. But I was raised by a single mom, but she's the best. We're only 19 years apart, so I feel like yeah, we're really close. But yeah, so she's great. So I grew up in LA, and definitely like humble beginnings. I don't like harp on the beginning of my story because I don't use it as a crutch, but like we'll definitely say humble beginnings.
What part of LA are you from?
So when I was a baby, we lived right by like Beverly Connection, if you know where that is.
Yeah.
And then just from there I moved. We used to move a lot, but always in that same little area. So by the Grove, Hauser and Wilshire area, like by La Brea. I was always kind of in that space. I'm in the Valley now because I'm an adult.
You're adulting
I moved
in the
out
Valley.
of that.
So when you think about your childhood, you grew up in a single mom, and very similar to me, I also grew up in a single mom. What was like the one memory from your childhood that sticks with you for like, you know, as an adult? Like, I remember feeling a certain way when this happened.
Honestly, it was always just the fact that it was like me and my mom, and that we were going to figure it out, and she always did figure it out. And like I said, like we were not in you know, like a super comfortable situation. I mean, when I was a baby, my mom would sleep on the floor of somebody's house and just like hold me. Yeah, because she was trying to figure out, she was an immigrant. She lost her parents when she was super young. And so, but throughout that, despite, you know, my dad not being in the picture and whatnot, and he was in and out, to be fair. But I always just remember, I was like, it was always me and her, and we were always going to figure it out, or she was always going to figure it out. And she always did. Like, she, one way or another, she just put one foot in front of the other. She was very high agency. She really taught me what that meant.
What does high agency mean? Like, how do you describe that? Because I never heard that word before.
Really? Okay, so that's like the premise of what I write about on Substack. But to me, it basically means that, you know, you take everything into your hands. Like, you're not a victim about situations. You don't let situations control you. You basically say, I'm going to look at what I can do. I'm going to find what I can do. What steps can I take? What can I make happen? And you don't just like stop at, you know, the first bump.
Yeah.
So kind of like, you know, deciding to have agency in your life, deciding that like you're in control, deciding that you can do it.
You own the outcome of everything.
100%. It's funny because I actually say that to my team all the time. I'm like, you got to own the outcome here, not just the role. So yes, exactly that. And so that was such a common thread throughout my childhood, was the fact that, you know, my mom always held it down and figured it out. And she has a crazy story of her own, but yeah, that's really what I remember. And I also remember living in LA and loving it. And I still love LA. Like, LA is still my favorite place ever, despite our current challenges.
There's lots of challenges to play with. But okay, so you grew up in LA. Did you want to be an entrepreneur as a kid, or what were some of the activities? Were you always like super competitive? Like, kind of give us a rundown of what your childhood was like. Like, did you always? Because I was watching this podcast recently about like what goes into great entrepreneurs, and they all have like similar like characteristics. They were never like, I wouldn't say they're socially awkward, but they kind of created their own realities as kids. You know, they kind of weren't the person that just fits into every social circle. They're kind of in a very different way. They kind of created their own realities, and that's what made them great entrepreneurs. And I feel like
Yeah.
everyone I talk to has similar upbringings in some ways, you know?
Yeah, 100%. So yes, one, I was an only child. And so I spent a lot of my time reading. I still love to read. It's like still my favorite hobby, but I was always reading something. And I think when you read a lot, you're just so used to like stories and possibilities and,
Sure.
all of that sort of thing.
Imagination. It
Imagination.
cultivates, as I have two daughters, so like it cultivates an imagination
A
inside.
100%. So that was a big one for me. And then also, so because my mom was always working, and had to provide for me, I spent a lot of time alone. And whether that was like, being at home alone or walking home from school or anything like that, and I wasn't really involved in a ton of sports and stuff. I did cheerleading for like a few minutes, but because of that, and we didn't have Instagram or MySpace or TikTok or whatever. I don't know. We
No.
didn't have that stuff. So I would either read or, yeah, I would just be bored and kind of figure things out. But one thing with, and I'll credit both my parents for this, despite my dad kind of being weaving in and out of my life. Both my parents were always like, you can have whatever you want, but it's up to you to get it. And
Yeah.
they would do this in like small ways too, of like if something was too high and I couldn't reach it. Okay, can you get creative here? Can you figure out a way to grab it
Yeah.
maybe? And so that was like a very common theme in my house, was like you can have really good outcomes, but it's up to you to get them. When it came to your grades, when it came to anything that I did. And my mom was born and raised in India too, so she was very big on school, and you had to get good grades and all of that. So like overall, I mean, I think I was a good kid, and I was just always interested in solving problems because that's kind of what I learned, and I was on my own a lot.
So
um
the key of like one of the things that you picked up as a kid is to similar in business is that analyzing a problem and trying to figure out a solution to to something that's complex, that's overwhelming.
yeah, 100%. And I think by nature I was always interested in business and also in solving problems. Like when I was in middle school, I decided that I was going to take on world hunger. So
Wow.
this is a like
Okay.
a hilarious story. But I was like, oh, that's interesting that kids are starving. Like that seems, weird. Like what can we do about it? And I like again lived in LA. I was in middle school. I was in like 7th grade at this point. And so I started this thing called Hunger for Change, and I made I would call grocery stores. Like I would call Bristol Farms, and I
Wow.
would call grocery stores, and I would say, "Can I stand outside your grocery store and ask people to donate to my charity?" And like I'll maybe like do a bake sale or something. But either way, I'm asking them to donate. That's the point, whether we sell something or not. And a few grocery stores said yes. And so I would go, and sometimes I would bring friends, and sometimes I would go and I would stand outside these grocery stores, and I would tell them, "Oh, we're doing Hunger for Change, and we are raising money to end world hunger and whatnot." And it actually like picked up. It got picked up by KTLA. They like featured me in a
Whoa,
segment
that's
on
so
this.
cool.
Yeah, it was crazy. And so then from there, we worked with
How
this
old are you at the time?
7th grade, 8th grade, something like that.
I mean, I just think that's impressive, just to take matters in your own hands. And when I
Yeah,
was in
I would
seventh
get creative.
when I was in 7th or 8th grade, I was committing mischief and wasn't helping solve world hunger. I was helping solve the need of more money in my
It's
pocket. You
so
know.
funny. So I was just always like into that. And then I started getting like a little like more creative. Then I called a hotel and I said, "Can I use your ballroom?" And I was like, "I have this charity. And I
Well,
think I was like, if I could throw a party and get all these people to come and charge them an entrance fee, then I could raise a lot of money." And the hotel gave me their ballroom. And it was crazy, honestly. Anyways, all of this is documented on KTLA in case anyone
well,
wants to go watch the
no, no, we
segment.
believe you. It's interesting as we get older, and when we're young, we just don't know anything. So
Yeah.
like you could accomplish so much from not knowing
100%.
anything, but like, when now that we're older, we kind of reason ourselves out of like
Yeah,
out of doing things. Like,
it's so
no,
true.
we can't do that because the hotel needs to make money. I'm
Yes,
like, I'm like, no, the hotel has an empty ballroom. Let's just
exactly.
throw an event in the empty ballroom. Why not, right?
Oh, when you're naive, you can
Naive.
do anything.
I think I think that we all need to be a little bit more naive
Yeah.
as people. I think like if we're slightly more naive, that
Mhm.
our minds will open up to possibility.
It's very true.
So okay, so you obviously have a lot of great stories from your childhood, where'd you go to school? Tell us about your
Mhm.
college and how you started Viper, because
Yeah.
Viper is such an incredible story.
Thank you. So I didn't go to college actually. I went to Beverly for high school. And even in high school, I was taking APs. I was ASB president. Again, like I was a great student.
Is
There
that
was no
Beverly High
problems
School?
there.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
And I was super involved, super active, but I knew that college wasn't going to be for me. And the main reason was because all throughout high school, I had to hold down a job, right? Again, like I come from very humble beginnings. I didn't have the resources that other students had there. And for a long time when I went to Beverly, we were using like a different address. And then um, I think at one point, when was it? There was like 1 year I actually did move to like the right zip code. But aside from that, we were using a different address.
That's so
And
funny.
a lot of the people that went to Beverly were able to afford, SAT tutors, and they were able to afford just all sorts of things, private tutoring, this and that. And now I understand how big of a difference that could make. I couldn't afford any of those things. Mind you, like I was working at Menchie's, which is frozen yogurt.
Menchie's,
And
yeah.
yeah, I would work there after school. I was working as a tutor for like these little kids that I would also tutor after school. They were probably in like the first or second grade, and I would help them with their homework. Basically, whatever I could do to get extra money. And so, just being a junior or senior, you have to pay for everything. You have to pay for like homecoming and prom and junior senior night and any activity you want to do. And I remember thinking, like, man, I've been working every day at Menchie's. Like, and this is what, like, all my money's going to go to
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
Like, all my money's going to
That's
go
where
to
all your
this.
revenue goes as a
It's
kid.
robbing me blind. And so then when college came around, every application is $150. And then, your scores need to look like this and whatnot. And
Isn't that like the greatest
grift.
highway robbery
Yeah.
ever of anything? It's like, you're a kid, and I remember just as a kid, just, paying somebody to judge me.
Yeah. And
It's like going to college is paying someone to judge you. It's like, tell me if I'm good enough to go to your school, and
right.
and I have to pay you a fee.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't get into any college. Very, I don't know,
Yeah.
it's similar to you, but I had bad grades.
So, yeah, so I was like, all right, this is just not for me. And I knew one thing about me that I've always known, I've always relied on is like, I can just go to the library. Like, I grew up going to the library. I love the library. It's always been a resource for me. I
Sure.
still have a library card. I can just go to Barnes and Noble. I'm like, I will figure this out. I don't know if this is for me. And it just wasn't. And another thing too was, so my senior year was at the time of like when Facebook slowly started to become
Yeah.
popular. And so the people who had graduated before me were now posting these albums on Facebook. And so when they would go to college and I would see the photos, I was like, it just looks like you guys are partying a lot to me. Like, that's the
Yeah.
only thing that's ending up on Facebook. So I'm just seeing that. So I'm kind of sitting there like,
Am I
man,
missing anything?
I work all week at Menchie's. I can barely afford the prom ticket. And now you want me to spend $150 on college applications. I don't even really know what it's going to do for me. I'm 4 years of this. I'm going to be in debt. I don't know if this is for me. And so I didn't go at all.
Want to give a big shout out to the one competitor at Mute 6 that just annoyed the crap out of me. When I was at Mute 6, the company I started and sold to Dentsu, we had to pitch against Power Digital. Both our expertise were similar. We were one of the first performance-focused Facebook ad agencies. We did creative, we did Google, we did retail media, and we pitched against a lot of agencies. But the one agency that really was difficult for us, that like when I saw them, they're like, oh, these guys are incredible. What they do was Power Digital. Power Digital has an incredible team. They specialize in full funnel marketing solutions. Whether you want to understand attribution and measurement on Facebook, whether you want to scale on retail media, Power Digital is a great partner and a great partner to the podcast. Highly recommend them, powerdigital.com. Never tried college.
Never tried.
Well, that's impressive. I mean, I've tried college and it wasn't for me. Like
Yeah.
I've tested 4 different colleges and just never showed up to class, and it was an expensive hobby. But you just so what did you do after high school? You just went to
So,
work for
well,
it?
first thing I did, I really did go to the bookstore. But so at the time, I was like, maybe I'll be a librarian. Like I found that very interesting. So I went to the library and I tried to apply, and they were like, oh, you actually need a degree in library science. Like I would have
Library
never guessed. So
is that a real topic? Library science?
that's what I was told.
So let me get this straight. You have to go to school and pay $30,000 a year for a degree.
Yeah.
Where you make $60,000 as a librarian science?
Probably. I think a lot of majors are like that though. Like I think about a lot of things people major in, and I'm like, and then what happens?
I mean, I played college football, and a lot of kids in the football team majored in this thing called recreational science.
Oh, okay. That's fun.
What is
Yeah.
recreational science? It's like the science behind doing
Yeah.
recreational stuff.
Yeah, what does that mean?
And like, where's this degree go? And I think like that's it's off topic, but it's one of the issues I have with society is
Mhm.
that like we brainwash people into thinking that everyone needs to go to college. The education will set you free, and like
Right.
you learn how to be educated by finding your place in society versus just going to school
100%.
and being taught a book, you know?
100%. And I was like, again, I was also naive. I was like, I can figure this out.
Yeah.
So, so I went to the library and whatnot. They told me, okay, you need a degree in library science. I'm like, all right. So I was like, all right, well, what can I do? Maybe I've worked at Menchie's. Maybe I can get like a hostess job at a restaurant somewhere. And so that's the first thing I did was I just applied to a bunch of restaurants and I would work at different restaurants as a hostess. And then I was like, all right, I'll get an internship so I can learn some form of, career. And I knew that I was really interested in the world of nightlife and restaurants and venues and that sort
Yeah.
of thing. That was always something that like fascinated me. Um, so I applied for an internship with a company that did nightlife promotions and they owned like a nightclub and a bar. And so I would intern for them for free during the day, like no school credit, no nothing. I think I was from like 10 to 6. And
Well, that's a
then,
long time to go without making money.
yeah, I know it was a long day.
8 hours a day of with making zero.
Making 0. Oh my god, and being, like, verbally harassed in the
Oh
process.
my God, I can
Um,
only imagine.
yeah, and so I would work for them during the day, and then I would literally change in the bathroom and then go to my restaurant job, which at the time, I worked at different restaurants in LA. I worked at Pink Taco, I worked at Sir.
Oh wow.
Those were, like yeah, those were 2 of my main ones, but I also worked at, like, smaller restaurants in between too that I don't think people would know. Um so I would change in the bathroom and then I would go to this restaurant job. And so when this company that I was interning for, they were also producing events because they had 2 versions of the company. One was their nightlife venue, so like a bar and a nightclub, and then one was event production. So they would have these events and I would say, "Oh, I'll work. I'll work for free. Like let me get some experience." And so sometimes they would be on weekends and sometimes it would be during the day and whatnot. But anyways, they were always long days, working events. So I would show up at 7 in the morning,
Wow.
work for free all day and whatnot. And then these events, you produce an event all day. It starts at 8 p.m. and then it goes till midnight. So it's a long day essentially. And I would just talk to everyone. I was super young. I was bubbly. I was like, hey, what's going on? I would talk to everyone. And so these event producers started picking up on the fact that I would talk to everyone. And so it'd be like 12 hours into the day. I've been there since 7 a.m. It's now 7 p.m.
And
I'm
you would
like,
just talk to people the whole day.
well, I would do whatever they needed. I'd be like, can I
Okay.
help you? Can I help you? Can I help you? What do you need? Like, I would do a lot of any odd job I would do. Mind you, I was working for free. So at 7 p.m., there's one huge event that I'm working. Calvin Harris is going to DJ. It's a massive event. It was $1 million production. And I'm like in my jeans and t-shirt and I like have been there since 7. I have no makeup on, looking a mess. And the woman's like, "Oh, can you handle check-in?" And I'm like, "Can I handle check-in? What does that mean?"
Yeah.
But sure, why not? So they put me at this check-in and there's no system whatsoever. I know because I've been here all day. I know they're spending $1 million on Calvin Harris to DJ.
Wow.
I know that they're spending tons on production and talent and floral and everything. And they have tons of talent coming tonight. I know all of these things. And I'm like, so there's no plan for the 1,000 guests that you have that are going to come in? Like there's no plan for how they're going to come inside? And the answer was no. There was
Wow.
no plan for who was going to check the guest list. There was no plan for who was going to make sure like the right people were in and were not.
So what do you need for a good event in that bracket? You need people.
Yeah, you need people.
You need I'm just gonna go on a limb and say this, but you need good-looking people at a good-looking event, right?
I mean, that's one layer of it, but I definitely think you need competent people.
Competent people, yeah.
100%,
The only reason why I say that, I used to be a nightclub promoter
Yeah.
in New York City, and if I'm just gonna say like I'm not the best looking guy, so if I went into the nightclub, they wouldn't let me in. They'd be like, "Steve, you're not a fit here," and I was like, "All right, but if you bring 3 women who are better looking, way better looking than you, we might just let you in and slip by," So like, I say that in jest of like, yeah,
Yeah.
like in the nightclub world is very
Yeah.
it's very tough,
No, it is. I mean, and especially this was like, years ago. So it used to be even, now today everything I think is very lenient and like the world has changed. But like back then,
It's a
especially
very
before social
shallow.
media
It's a
and
very
stuff,
before pre-social media is a very
very
shallow.
shallow.
It's like
Yeah.
you want in, you gotta
And
go bring people.
they were the gatekeepers too, so they
Yep.
could do that. But yeah, so and that's really what happened is I was there and I remember being 18 or 19 and thinking, wow, there's no system for this. Like no one has thought about this. So you guys have 1,000 people about to show up. You just spent all this money and time making this whole event and nobody thought about like the guest experience. And at the time I didn't know that it was called the guest experience. I was just thinking this seems like
Yeah.
a silly slip up.
But
But no, that was the common practice at the time.
so how did it pivot from? So you, wow, there's a business here. Like, give me that
Hmm.
kind of like, because right now you have one of the top event staffing
Hmm.
businesses in
Yeah.
in the area, which I think is very impressive.
Yeah.
To go from like where you started to building an incredible business, but like how did your business start from like seeing a problem and then building a solution to that problem?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I did was brought it to my boss who owned the company that I was interning for, that I was working for free. I said, "Hey, I think there's a huge miss here. Um, you guys are throwing these massive events, you have $1 million clients. No one is thinking about the way people are checking in or their guest experience." And at the time, I was only thinking about check-in. Now we do the full service of staffing, but at the time I was just thinking about just the door. And this was also, again, like you said, when things were more exclusive. So there was more responsibility of the person at the door. You had to know who was who. You had to be culturally fluent. Like you had to know
Yeah.
who was an A-list celebrity, who was a celebrity, who did need leniency, and who was like, just a rock star party crasher.
Don't kick out the A-list celebrity. Is pretty much
Right.
what you're saying.
And also just like there was like a natural, I don't know, there was just you just needed to be able to read a room. So I don't think it was as simple as like just put a body there. And like I didn't create the concept of event staffing, right? Like people have been working events for as long as events have existed. But I think that event staffing was always seen very transactional, very traditional, put a body there, have them, do a job that you assign them. But I saw this as like, here's a massive market to have like a well-trained team that can read a room, that can operate, with actual precision, that looks the part. They're all, maybe
Yeah.
we put them wearing in a similar color scheme. So it's not 1,000 different colors and nobody knows who to go to for help, and just little things like that. Like, could we make this more tactical? And also they would hand you like a paper list with 1,000 names on it. And it's like, what are we doing here, you guys? And I remember saying, let me just build this within your company. I already interned for you. Let me create this like little minor division underneath you guys. I'm from LA. I will recruit my friends to work here and we will be your door team when you have these events. But instead of
What did they say?
they said this is the worst idea they've ever heard. I mean, it was just one person who said that. But like she was like, yeah, I think this is a terrible idea. I don't think it will work. She also said the iPad, replacing a paper list with an iPad is crazy because, well, what if the iPad doesn't turn on? What if this? No, you always need a paper list. And mind you, like her solution at the time, this is a true story, was you need to go to a hardware store and buy like one of those camping lanterns to make sure that you had light to read the paper
Wow.
list. I mean, I'm not making this up. This is exactly what she said. It was archaic.
A lantern to look at the. All right.
To look at it, but I think also at the time, like that was just the world was like there were gatekeepers to industries, and I was an 18-year-old intern. So what do I
Wow.
know?
So you saw the problem very early that there was no staffing for these businesses.
Yeah.
You want to do a big event, you want to curate an event. There was no solution for staffing, and you saw even worse, the people doing the events are so far behind in
Yeah.
understanding like the business that they're in
Right.
that you're like, hey, listen, let me find this. So how did you find this exact solution of Viper? Like, cause like I know like every time I see your business just growing through the roof, and I just want to say how proud I am because
Thank
you're a really
you.
good friend, and I'm just impressed. Like,
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I was always looking for a solution. Truly, I really was, and I knew that I didn't want to be an event producer. I mean, event producers to me have just the hardest job. I give them a lot of credit. They balance so many different things, and I just didn't want their job, to be quite frank, and that was the internship that I was in. It was like that event production, like nightlife
Yeah.
role. And I just knew I didn't want that. But I knew that I loved events and I knew nightlife. And I also was at the same time a hostess at a restaurant. So it kind of worked out where I was like, I actually know the front of house and I know I like being in this world. I'm adjacent to this world. I don't want to produce events, that's for sure. And I don't want to work for the person that tells me my idea sucks.
No.
But I happen to be a host at a restaurant, so I kind of know the front of house, and I happen to see a white space in this market.
Wow, cool. And so like what are the first so the business is called Viper, right?
Hmm.
What were the first like 1 or 2 years? Like what were some of the challenges that you had to overcome? Was so you start this event staffing business. You didn't just like just didn't do 7 or 8 figures overnight.
Right.
You obviously had challenges. What were some of those early challenges that you had to overcome, and
Yeah.
like how tell us about the business today as it is.
So in the beginning, I did have a business partner in the beginning who I later bought out a couple years down the road. And I had met her at the same company that I was interning for. And so we started that company together. It was brutal in the beginning. We had no money, honestly, like in any form, not even a line of credit. Like when I say no money, I
Wow.
really mean no money. So we would
What would you do? Like, how did you operate a business with staff with no
Oh,
money?
this is fun. I would call everyone I knew and I would be like, hey, are you having a party anytime soon? And some of them would say yes. And I'd be like, okay, great. Can I stand at your door? It's like such an odd thing to say, but I
Wow.
would seriously tell them this. I would say, can one of us stand at your door? And at the time I was valuing this at like $100 because I was like, okay, even if we get 50, it's still worth it. Even if we get zero, it's worth it because we get exposure. But like my target was like, if we can make $100 for doing this, then it's a huge
And
win.
with your brand, the Viper brand, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like under the company, but at the
Yeah.
time, like the company was just
You.
me and her. Like there.
Wow. So you would in exchange for just the free branding, you would say
Yeah.
like, "Can we stand in front of your door?"
Yes, literally.
Hmm.
And we both had other jobs. Like she was working at a venue and I was working at restaurants still. And then I started working at Hyde as well, which is like the
Yep.
nightclub
Yep. I
restaurant.
know
Yeah.
hard. Yep.
Um, so yeah, I would work and she would work and then we would try to pick up, if anyone was having a party, we would do their door and whatnot. And to be honest with you, I mean, the word of mouth, it came really quickly because people did start saying yes. They would have us there. And then because we were also, again, I'm from LA. I grew up
Yeah.
here. I know tons of people here. So it was like, oh, I'll bring a couple girls. So now you have 4 girls and they're all dressed in black standing at your door with iPads. I mean, the word kind of spread quickly. And this was at the time when LA was getting a lot of celebrity events. This was back like before COVID.
Yeah.
So if something was going on, it was happening in LA. And so just naturally, like they kind of started coming our way and we would take any meeting. I mean, it did not matter what you did. I didn't care if you were a drug dealer. I'm like, I will take any meeting,
Wow.
just to see who you know and kind of work with you, get your connections. Would take any job, would do it for free. We always, if we made money, we would pay the girls that worked and we would do it for free. And so that was like the origin story of how it started. And then COVID came and like, completely like dismantled
Yeah.
that.
What? Tell us like what happened during. So you're running an event staffing company. COVID hits. What happens? Like, how does the business survive COVID?
So pre-COVID, we were just the door. I hadn't branched into event staffing yet. I was
Yeah.
really like a door team. Like you're having a party, we do your, because at the time we were doing like guest lists. Like we're gonna do your guest
Yeah.
list. We're gonna stand at your door. COVID came and essentially wiped us out. I mean, it really did. We couldn't do events. We couldn't do anything. A lot of the people that owed us money went bankrupt or said that they weren't, paying out some of those like final things given the nature of COVID and whatnot. We didn't qualify for the PPP loan because we didn't have any actual employees at the time.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
and we weren't paying ourselves on salary. So we were not employees either, technically. So I had no pay stubs to show them to get that payroll protection loan. So we couldn't get that. COVID was a nightmare,
Yeah, I can
honestly.
only imagine.
Yeah, but things got better after. So just like having that resilience was great, and then getting out of COVID, landed a deal with SoFi Stadium, which was
Well, and that was
really
kind
what
of the
took us
turning
back.
point of the whole thing of like you
Yeah.
land a deal with SoFi and now you're staffing all of SoFi's events, right?
So now we do we're inside Bootsy Bellows at SoFi for every Rams game and every concert. Yeah, it's my team in
Oh,
there. Yeah.
wow, that's so cool.
Yeah.
What was that feeling like when you got that contract?
I don't even think I recognized the magnitude of what it was. I really
Yeah.
didn't, because I was like, I was beat down from COVID, you
Yeah.
know? So when it happened, I was like, thank you, universe. I think, like, I don't even know, you know, we'll see what happens with this. Is this too good to be true? Because I was just kind of, my self-esteem was really low after COVID.
Yeah.
And so it came our way and we worked on it, but I really had low expectations. I was like, we'll see if this even goes through.
What did you ask to change? What did you do to change the business? Because right now you saw that there was an opportunity to grow the business, but you
Yeah.
saw to do that you needed to offer more services. What were
Hmm.
those services that you were going to offer?
Yeah. I honestly went back to ground zero and I was like, I'm rebuilding this business as if it didn't exist. So I added a bunch of new services. I added brand ambassadors and bottle service and bartenders and strategy and whatnot. And I didn't do this all at once. I did this slowly. And I would go to my clients and I would call them and I would say, hey, this is what happened. I bought out my business partner. I'm changing the business on a fundamental level. We're going to do this. We're going to offer these new things. Like, you know, if you're interested in trying us out. And I was really, really, really like under promising and over delivering. That was like the
Got it.
most important thing, was we're going to deliver on service over and over again. I also lowered all of our prices. So I just changed how the business ran in every single way. I lowered our prices. I focused more on volume, instead of just, you know, these higher rates. And I changed how we bill. I changed how we do proposals to clients. I changed the way we pitch clients. I changed our deck. I changed our logo. I changed our services. I
Wow.
mean, I just rebuilt the business from zero.
And what has been like? What was this 2023?
Yes.
And in 3 years, what has been the outcome of making some of those big, scary changes?
I mean,
Yeah,
it's,
the business has grown significantly.
I mean, yeah, the business is like beyond, I mean, I don't want to say it's beyond what I thought I could have done, because I think we're only just getting started. But I mean, to go from, you know, being in debt to being like a multi seven figure business and also being a profitable business, that's the other thing. I ran it in like a very smart way because I just had all that trauma. I didn't
Yeah.
want to go back to that. I think that's like a common misconception, is everyone sees people raising money. They see these crazy numbers and it's like, but are they like making any profit? You just don't
No.
really know.
Well, I
Exactly.
mean, I don't think our system rewards profit sometimes,
Right.
especially in this era of growth in AI, and like everyone's trying to get to a point where they could raise more capital and tell their
Yeah.
story. And that's fine,
Right.
but I still have like fundamental respect for like businesses like yours, which
Yeah.
are highly profitable, which are founder operated, and
Yeah.
you know your business better than anyone else.
Totally, 100%. But profit was a big thing for me because I just came off of like multiple seasons of not having any money. So
So
I was done with that.
let me ask you a question, because like me and you, we come from a very similar background.
Mhm.
I didn't have any money growing up. I didn't know any rich people either. I don't know
Yeah.
if you knew like rich people as a kid. I didn't know any rich people, and when I made, you know, when I sold my business, I didn't know where to invest. Do you invest? Do you feel like that you're highly competent as an investor? Do you know where to put your money, or like,
No,
or do
I
you
do
feel
not.
like, or you feel like
I do not.
that's like a gap for you? Because I
Yeah.
feel like you know, I was totally unprepared as an investor.
Yeah. I honestly, and I know like some people say you don't need to do this. I'm just like under management because like
Yeah.
I am not like, I told myself for years that I would learn and I would figure it out and I would become like, you know, more involved in it. And I think years went by where I didn't do that. So, and I know like a lot of people say, okay, you don't need to be under management. It's so easy to do by yourself. I know. And it's like, and I have read some of the books. For now though, I'm just under management. If that changes at some point and I can do it by myself, okay, fine, I will. But the
What do you mean
reality was,
under? Oh, it's just, you said someone manages your
yeah,
money,
yeah.
and do you know like what they put the money into?
They send me reports.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
That's
we
that's
could
the
talk
extent of my
about it offline. I
knowledge.
could give you some learnings that I've had just from,
Yeah.
you know,
Okay, great.
failing and winning.
No, that would be great. I mean, that's, you know, the common thing. Everyone says like, "Oh, you can do it yourself." And I've written small checks into companies that like I
Yeah.
believe in with like founders I like, but aside from that, no.
The best advice I got from one of my friends who's also on the
Mhm.
podcast, who runs a big wealth management agency, is whatever investment you do, compare it to the S&P.
Yeah.
Like, are you beating or you're not beating the
Right.
S&P? And then obviously liquidity.
Yeah.
And, you
Yeah.
know, it's keeping it simple simply growing, like, and the question I
Right.
always have about managers, sorry to get off on a
No,
tangent here,
no.
but will the managers beat the S&P? And
Yeah.
if they're not beating the S&P, why not just put it in the
Well, they
S&P?
beat it last year, so
Okay, there you
I'm
go.
like,
There you go.
yeah.
There you go. But
Yeah.
like that's the question you always have to ask is like, all right, am I liquid and am I beating the S&P?
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, that was one of my learnings from selling a business is like, what do I do next? Like, what do you
Yeah.
do with the
100%.
liquidity? So okay, you're growing your business.
Mhm.
Right now, what are the biggest challenges that keep you up at night with your business?
Oh man. Um, well, I think, when you begin to hire a team and your company grows, the weird part is that most of your job becomes just being like a leader.
Yep.
And so I get out of the weeds. I'm not really in the weeds operationally anymore. However, I do still parachute in when I'm needed.
Sure.
So like I have like the things I focus on and then somebody's like ding and I'm like I'll be right there.
Yeah.
So I do jump into the weeds anytime I'm needed for sure. But the biggest thing is like I have this team under me now, and like I will be up all night being like, okay, I know that you need this type of management style and you need this, and like, how can I bring out the best version of you and the best version of you? And like, I think it's like so much of my job now is building that structure and just being a leader for them.
Sure.
So that's the season that I'm in is really like essentially doing that.
Motivating and inspiring your team
Yeah,
and teaching them how to make decisions to do the right thing.
that's the biggest thing is like the
Yep.
decision tree of like, where do you go when you need this decision made and can it avoid coming to me? Okay, well, then I need to arm you with the tactics to be able to do that.
So a lot of your learnings you share in your newsletter, and I don't really bring up other people's kind of publishing a lot on the
Mhm.
podcast, but I just gotta be honest, I'm very impressed with
Thank
how
you.
you've grown this newsletter. And as someone that's, just starting out in the podcast world, I probably have 10 podcasts and, got 118 subscribers. Thanks, man. 118, from 117.
Yay.
So you got to start somewhere, but just intellectually curious. Number one, tell us about the newsletter because I feel like you have an audience of people that
Mhm.
really look up to you.
Yeah.
You've built a 7-figure business from zero.
Mhm.
We have a lot of similarities in that we both came from nothing. But like, what inspired you to want to give back to the smart is sexy? And
Yeah.
like, tell us about like the newsletter.
So most of what I write, and it's not just for the girls. I actually get a lot of male readers too, but I do think I write it for the young girls because it's kind of like writing to my younger self. It's really about being high agency, not being a victim to your circumstances. How can you accomplish things even when it seems like you can't? And I just noticed that so much of that type of content is generally not directed to girls. If
Yeah,
you look at the type of content directed to men, you get a lot of like the stoicism, the military mindset, the
sure.
founder podcast, whatever. When you look at the content directed to girls, you get a lot of beauty or soft life, matcha and Pilates, healing, therapy,
Manifestation.
manifestation, what's your sign, na 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 na. And all of that's fine.
Yeah.
But it's not really how my brain operates. My brain operates in this way. It's like, okay, if we don't know the answer, we're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
Nothing's impossible. We're just going to keep
It's
going.
like very practical.
It's so practical and it's so it just doesn't allow for excuses. And that's how I built my business. I mean, it's literally the things I train my literal team on. And now I have hundreds of girls that work for me in real life that I train them on these concepts and it's why we're the best at what we do. We are by far the most premium agency. And so I was like, we got to, why not bring this to a wider audience?
What has been? I mean, I don't. I know the name "smart and sexy" is more female focused,
Yeah.
but I think I will go on a limit. I'll say the content you create is not female focused. It's for everyone,
Hmm.
and there's a lot of people, both men and women, that
Yeah.
aspire to be bigger versions of themselves. Like
Yeah.
sometimes I feel like we get jaded by living on the coast.
Hmm.
We forget that like the people in Middle America are the people that really need the inspiration.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the other thing too is that um sometimes with online content and like you and I are the opposite because we've
Yeah,
actually built things in real life, but a lot of the people that have a ton of time to put out all this coaching content or whatnot, they, with all due respect to them, they mostly haven't done it in the real world.
Yeah.
You know, how often you get on TikTok, get on something, and there's a new coach, a new course, and it's like, well, what have you built in the real world? And so I think about that all the time. I'm like, okay, I have men and women on my team. I've built this, in the real world with them. And to be able to bring that mindset, because exactly what you just said, the people in the middle of America, the people in other territories, they might not be able to move to a tier 1 market and work for Viper, but at
Yeah.
least you can read Smart is Sexy and read that newsletter and take some of like the mindset that we use and be essentially part of the team in that way.
Sure. I mean, I think the message that you're sending to, as someone who's a girl dad, I have 2 girls. I want to, the reason why I'm always like so impressed with you, Celeste, is that the message that you send to women is so organic and so natural and so real, and it's very difficult, in my opinion, if it were a guy sending that message.
Yeah.
I don't think I could send that message to
Yeah.
my daughters of saying, hey, listen, like, take everything as a lesson,
Right.
learn from it, be logical,
Right.
problem solve. And I guess I watch your business and I'm like, wow, like you practice what you preach, but the message and the inspiration that you send to others is really the coolest thing.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. I think that is true. Like, it doesn't feel like mansplaining because it's coming from me.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think
Totally.
the other thing too is like I'm also like deeply feminine, and so I'm not like telling women to be like, oh, we should be like more masculine, or we should be more of a warrior. Like, I don't, that's not my lingo. That's not
No.
my vibe. My vibe is like, you can be deeply feminine, but you can also, not make excuses for yourself and go after what you want. There's not just like one way to achieve your goals. It might not be just the soft matcha and Pilates every
Mm.
single day. It might be we're being a little more high agency than that, but like there is the world in which both can coexist, and that's kind of where Smart is Sexy lives.
That's cool. And how'd you grow that follow? I mean, you have 150, I mean, just intellectually curious, like
Yeah.
you went from like 0 to 150,000 readers.
Yeah.
Like, how did you do that?
Well, I think the nice thing for me on a personal level was I built the platform with the name Smart is Sexy. So when I would write it, I was so much more confident because it felt like an alter ego. Like, if
Yeah.
it was my name, I think I would have overthought every single thing I put out, and I don't think I would have put out, first of all, the volume of work that I put out, and I don't think I would have been as honest because it's my name. And I'm like, oh my God, what if a client sees one of those?
Sure.
But doing it under Smart is Sexy, when I was building, I'm
You
like,
could be.
it's like Hannah Montana. Nobody
Yeah.
knows who I am. So I was way more confident. And so when I would I would be a little bit more real in what I would say. And I think that just worked really nicely. I think people were like, oh, this is honest.
That's so cool. And what, getting back to Viper, you're able to talk to the younger version of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're, the 21-year-old version that's going through the hardest of hard, working from 10 to 6 in the internship and really not able to like understand the path. Like, what
Mm-hmm.
advice do you give to that young woman who doesn't understand the path, is very like, not to say sad, but like you see all these other women that have it a lot easier than you,
Mm-hmm.
and you kind of like wish that you had it easier. Like, what
Yeah.
advice are you giving? Because I think a lot of your success is because the hardship that you experienced as a kid.
Yeah. 100%. And I think knowing what I know now, and what I would say is like all of the things that I went through and all of the things that, you may be going through, that is building your resilience, right? And so like along the journey, this is how you win long term, because you develop the skills that are needed to stay in the game. And when I think of my friends who were born into money or had a bit of a softer life, I love them to death, but like respectfully, like you are nowhere near as resilient as I am.
And you're not going to work as hard.
Definitely not.
I mean, just I mean, it's the sad reality of life is that if you pointed, our office at Mute 6 was next to a graveyard.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually like a Jewish graveyard. I'm a Jewish guy. So
Yeah.
like, but I remember someone pointed to the graveyard and is like, Steve, if I gave you a shovel, would you go shovel up that body and bring it back here if it meant growing your business? And I was like, give me the shovel.
Yeah.
I'll go. And because like you have no backup plan.
100%. And that's what I always say. Plan B is just to do plan A better.
Yeah.
And so I think that the value is really in the resilience. And honestly, like, and I skip over like my, childhood story all the time. It's not even something I really talk about. And again, and I always say I don't talk about it because I don't use it as a crutch.
Sure.
But it gave me like the resilience that I needed, and it gave me I don't know, it just gave me grit. And I think like so I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't go back and, switch
I'm
it
not
and just be born a nepo
I'm not
baby.
I'm not like the biggest manifester, but
Mhm.
we're gonna use a manifestation
'Kay.
exercise here. So it's May 20th, 2026 right now, I
Okay.
think. And if we're gonna fast forward 3 years from now,
Mhm.
how big of a company is Viper? What are some of the accomplishments? I'm gonna have you back on the podcast. You're gonna say, Steve, Viper's now an 8-figure business. Now
Yeah.
we serve this amount of people. We have this amount of community. This is the impact we're having. Kind of fill in the
Yeah.
blanks for me as far as where
Yeah.
you're at.
Yes, 100%, definitely an 8-figure business. I also think at that point we will have expanded into we're working on a few things right now, and I don't want to like give too much
Yeah.
away, but there is a next generation aspect of it. There is there's a few different verticals that we would expand into, and it's definitely it's like when you see a big agency that has divisions and they have the sports and then they have the actors and then they have this, it's our version of that. And
Yep.
it's something that's like really cool. So
Great.
I'm excited about it.
Fantastic. So before we wrap, did we skip over anything? Is there any stories that you want to share? Any plots that we can go over, or actually one last question, should I
Yeah.
say? Well, we could delete that. What advice, there's a woman out there that's 20 to 21 years old that grew up in a similar place as you. She's, or maybe even he, or it
Yeah.
could be a guy too. They're going through a lot. They're trying to there's a lot of pressure on them because the AI era is upon us.
Mhm.
There's a lot of pressure to either to go to school, go to school, go to school, go to school, even though they don't see a vision or future in going to school, and they come from lower income.
Mhm.
What advice are you giving this person?
Um I think the best thing to say is there are no rules. I always say like the best advice is not to take advice. Just because everyone is so different, and like if there's something in you and you're like, "No, I have resilience or I have grit or I am down to just keep pushing," then I think you just figure it out as you go. I think the one thing that's hard today, again, like I said, is there's so much advice online. There's so many coaches. Every time you open your
Yeah,
phone, there's somebody telling you how to live. I think so much of it is phony, and I think really what you have to do is like,
it's disingenuous.
yeah, you have to think
Yeah,
for yourself. The best thing I could tell you to do is think for yourself. And if you are committed to figuring it out, then you will figure it out.
sounds good. It's an awesome podcast. Celeste, thanks again for coming on. Excited to keep in touch and figure out what you're doing next.
Same. Thank you for having
Yeah,
me.
cool.